Rome had fallen, at least symbolically, but the empire still existed. Barely. Other barbarian groups began carving out their own kingdoms inside its borders. The Vandals crossed into North Africa, capturing Rome's richest provinces. They became masters of naval warfare, using Roman ships against them. Their surprise raids on coastal cities and trade routes crippled Roman commerce. In 455 AD, they even returned to Rome and sacked it again, this time with far more destruction. The Vandals' tactics were brutal but effective. Lightning raids, swift retreats, and total domination of the Mediterranean sea routes. Meanwhile, in Gaul, modern-day France, another tribe was rising, the Franks. Instead of destroying Roman structures, they absorbed them. They adopted Roman weapons, languages, and even parts of their law. Their strategy wasn't just military, it was cultural takeover. By the time Rome fell completely, the Franks had already started building what would one day become medieval France. And then there were the Ostrogoths, who invaded Italy itself in the late 5th century. Their leader, Theodoric, didn't rely solely on brute force. He used diplomacy, patience, and Roman weaknesses against them. He promised stability to the Roman people, respect for their traditions, and peace after decades of chaos. Many Romans welcomed him, a barbarian, as their protector. That was one of the barbarians' greatest weapons, adaptation. They didn't just destroy Rome, they learned from it. They used Roman engineering, copied Roman armor, and even adopted Roman religion, Christianity. They understood that to truly win, they had to become part of what they were conquering. By the year 476 AD, the Western Roman Empire was finished. The last emperor, Romulus Augustulus, was a boy. When the Germanic general Odoacer marched into Rome, there was no great battle, no dramatic last stand. The city simply surrendered. The once mighty empire had become so weak, so divided, that it collapsed almost quietly. And so ended more than 1,000 years of Roman rule. But here's what's fascinating. The barbarians didn't see themselves as destroyers. Many of them admired Rome. They wore Roman clothes, minted Roman-style coins, and ruled from Roman cities. The empire didn't vanish overnight. It transformed. The barbarians didn't just crush Rome, they replaced it, piece by piece, with a new world. Still, it was their tactics, their speed, their adaptability, their psychological warfare that made it possible. They refused to play by Rome's rules. They fought on their own terms. While Roman generals planned grand, slow campaigns, the barbarians struck fast and vanished. While Rome relied on walls and legions, the barbarians used movement, surprise, and patience. They were united by desperation and vision. Rome was fighting to keep what it already had. The barbarians were fighting for a future. And in the end, the ones with more to gain always fight harder. The fall of Rome wasn't just the end of an empire. It was the birth of a new world. The Middle Ages began. The kingdoms of Europe rose from the ashes. The language, religion, and culture of Rome lived on, carried by the very people who once destroyed it. When we call them barbarians, we miss the truth. They were innovators of warfare, masters of adaptation, and the architects of Europe's next chapter. Rome's greatest failure was not realizing that the barbarians were learning, watching, waiting, and evolving until it was too late. In the end, it wasn't just swords and spears that crushed Rome. It was pride. Pride that refused to change, refused to see the world shifting around it. The barbarians did what Rome could not. They adapted, and that's why the Eternal City fell. If there's one lesson from the fall of Rome, it's this. No empire, no matter how powerful, is immune to change. Those who ignore change are doomed to be destroyed by it. And sometimes the ones you call barbarians are the ones who end up shaping the future. Subscribe to the channel for more forgotten stories, surprising truths, and deep dives into the moments that changed the world. The Roman Empire. For centuries, it was the most powerful civilization on Earth. Its armies ruled from the deserts of Egypt to the misty hills of Britain. Its cities were filled with marble temples, grand arenas, and bustling markets. To be Roman was to belong to something eternal, or so everyone thought. But nothing lasts forever. In the 5th century, after more than 1,000 years of dominance, Rome fell. Its mighty armies were defeated. Its cities were plundered. Its emperors became puppets, or corpses. And the people who brought Rome to its knees weren't other empires or great nations. They were the so-called barbarians. For centuries, the Romans used that word, barbarians, to describe everyone who wasn't Roman. To them, it meant wild, uncivilized, primitive. But history would prove that these barbarians were far more than just savages at the gate. They were clever, strategic, and ruthless. The fall of Rome wasn't one single event. It was a long, slow collapse, like a massive building cracking piece by piece until it finally gives way. And the barbarians, far from being mindless warriors, used tactics that outsmarted the greatest military machine of the ancient world. So how did it happen? How did these outsiders with smaller armies and fewer resources manage to crush the Roman Empire, something that had stood unshaken for centuries? Let's go back to the beginning. In the late 4th century, the Romans were already struggling. Corruption had spread through the empire. The economy was failing. The army, and once the pride of Rome, was filled with poorly trained recruits and foreign mercenaries who fought more for money than loyalty. Then from the steppes of Central Asia, a new terror appeared, the Huns. Mounted on fast horses, they were archers who could fire deadly arrows while galloping at full speed. They didn't fight like the Romans. They didn't march in formation or build siege lines. They struck suddenly from nowhere, with a storm of arrows burned everything, and vanished before the legions could even respond. The arrival of the Huns sent shockwaves across Europe. Entire tribes fled westward to escape them. Goths, Vandals, Alans, and others. And where did they flee? Straight into Roman territory. At first, Rome tried to control the situation by allowing some of these tribes, like the Visigoths, to settle inside the empire as allies. They were supposed to farm the land and fight for Rome when needed. But Roman officials treated them brutally, cheating them, starving them, and killing their leaders. That mistake would cost Rome everything. The Visigoths rebelled. Under their king Alaric, they used tactics Rome had never faced before. They avoided open battles at first. Instead, they raided supply lines, ambushed patrols, and cut off communication routes. They forced the Romans to fight on unfamiliar ground, using speed and surprise instead of brute force. And in 378 AD, at the Battle of Adrianople, the unthinkable happened. The Visigoths annihilated a full Roman army, led by Emperor Valens himself. It was one of the worst defeats in Roman history. Valens was killed, tens of thousands of his soldiers died, and the myth of Roman invincibility was shattered. After that, everything changed. The Romans could no longer pretend they were unbeatable. The barbarians had shown that Rome's legions, with all their discipline and armor, could be destroyed by clever tactics and unity. The Visigoths didn't stop there. They marched through the empire, sometimes making peace treaties, sometimes breaking them, always testing the limits of Rome's power. Alaric himself dreamed of recognition. He wanted land, titles, maybe even a Roman command. But the empire, arrogant as ever, refused to see him as anything more than a barbarian. So in the year 410, Alaric made a decision that would echo through history. He marched his army to the gates of Rome itself. For the first time in 800 years, the Eternal City was under siege. And Alaric didn't just rely on brute force. He used psychological warfare. He starved the city, cutting off its food supply. He spread rumors to break morale. When the Romans tried to negotiate, he made them pay huge ransoms, gold, silver, and even silk, then attacked anyway. Finally, on August 24th, 410 AD, his forces broke through the walls. The city of Rome, once the heart of the greatest empire in the world, was sacked. For 3 days, barbarian soldiers looted the palaces, the temples, and the homes of the wealthy. Fire and chaos consumed the city. But Alaric had ordered his men not to destroy everything. He wanted Rome humbled, not erased. He spared churches and the lives of many ordinary citizens. Even in victory, he had a strategy: to show that the old world was gone and a new one had begun.